Our final speaker is Gail Murkison, who is Associate Professor of Music at the College of William and Mary. Her research interests include William Grant Still, Mary Lou Williams, Zap Mama, Igor Stravinsky, and the music of social and cultural movements. She's the author of the book, The American Stravinsky, The Style and Aesthetics of Copland's New American Music, The Early Works, published by University of Michigan Press in 2012. She has contributed to a book chapter, Mary Lou Williams, Girls, Stars, and Politics of Negotiation, to Jill Sullivan's forthcoming book called Women's Bands in America, Performing Music, Gender in Society. She is currently the editor of Black Music Research Journal. Professor Murkison's presentation today is Let's Flip It, Queer Emancipation, Black Queer Traditions, Afrofuturism, Janelle Monáe to LaBelle. Let's welcome Professor Murkison.
I just want to say that this is just lovingly delightful, this particular panel this morning. Alrighty, and it's been quite informative as we proceed for today. Okay, coolness, wonderful. So, good morning. I begin today by asking y'all to flip it. Well, flip it. No, I don't mean, and I'll stay away from the computer until I need to get there. I don't mean flip, I don't mean for you all to turn a somersault. I mean flip the script. That is, as the Oxford English Dictionary defines, to make, quote, to make an unexpected or dramatic change. Also, to reverse the usual pre-existing positions in a situation, to turn the tables, close quotation. Flipping the script, as we say here, means to invert or disrupt dominant paradigms, narratives, to challenge and defy exogenous and constrictive categories, and in a range of ways engage in discursive practices and performative acts that push against the bounds and binds of existing social relations and power structures. Our gathering at Queer AMS of Color, as I like to call it, or rather, Race-ing Queer Music Scholarship marks the institutional beginnings of the ways in which we can flip and queer scripts, both with respect to the large institution of the American Musicological Society and the LGBTQ study group. The scholarly literature about African American as well as African and global African diasporic music, like Black Bodies, both expresses and engages struggle. The academic project does not just study, but it falls along and sometimes couples with a range of social, cultural, and political movements on a continuum from social commentary and critique to outright political action and revolution. Historically, Black LGBTQIA have been left out of academic music's historiography and the conversation, something I began to explore at the December 2015 symposium, Women Music Power. That this is so comes as no surprise. Recent African-American theorists argue that the term queer excludes, erases, or minimalizes people of color in their cultural productions. E. Patrick Johnson, as we theorizes queer studies, which addresses the concerns and needs of gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgendered people across issues of race, gender, class, and other positions. Francesca T. Royster applies queer theory to post-soul music, examining both LGBTQIA artists and how a range of musicians explore gender and non-heteronormative sexuality. Sheena C. Howard explores intersectional Black lesbian identity. Thus, today, I proceed to flip the script and move beyond identifying a concern and offer one approach to queering Black music through the prism of Afrofuturism, and the music of the 1970s group LaBelle, and the millennial Janelle Monáe. There's a long, rich Black queer music tradition. Afrofuturism has been central to it. Afrofuturist queer musicians, for example, from Sun Ra to Janelle Monáe, create post-civil rights worlds in which African Americans enjoy full social privilege, civil rights, and liberties, and inhabit spaces welcoming a range of emancipated Black sexuality. Two recordings and videos melding science and speculative fiction with post-war Black popular music challenge music industry representations of Black female bodies. Vis-a-vis bell hooks, as we've seen, they can be read as queer feminist critiques of an industry in which Black female bodies are consumed in pornographic tropes. Queen, parentheses, queer, untouchables, immigrants, excommunicated, and Negroid, close parentheses, posits Janelle Monáe as a revolutionary leader. Monet's dystopia is the successor to LaBelle's soul-era Afrofuturism. Its songwriter, member Nona Hendricks, out as LGBTQIA, characterized the group and her music in interviews as political. A queer reading of LaBelle's 1974 You Turn Me On, performed February 22, 1975 on Don Kirshner's rock concert, considers how the group navigated mainstream media's limiting girl group, soul diva dichotomies to offer a utopian vision of Black sexuality. Taken together, Monáe and LaBelle offer 2 points on the continuum of Afrofuturist queer resistance. Mark Derry is credited with having coined the term Afrofuturism, which is applied to African-American sci and speculative fiction writers, even going so far back as W.E.B. Du Bois. He defines Afrofuturism, as we can see here, and asks, quote, can a community whose past has been deliberately rubbed out and whose energies have subsequently been consumed for legible traces of its history imagine possible futures, close quotation. He foregrounds race, quote, furthermore, isn't the unreal estate of the future already owned by the technocrats, futurologists, streamliners, and set designers, white to a man, who have engineered our collective fantasies, close quotations. Afrofuturism has long been attractive to Black musicians, as it is one aspect of 20th century modernism. Afrofuturism, as John Zwed reminds us in his biography of one of the original Afrofuturist musicians, Sun Ra, has its antecedents in the earliest New World African cosmology, as those earliest African slaves believed that after death, their souls could fly back to Africa. A perception that enriches our understanding of the popularity of the hymn, I'll Fly Away, popular among so many Black religious congregations. Sun Ra can be claimed as a queer musician in the sense that he was asexual in the homosocial environment of an all-male collective household. To extend backwards the work of Francesca Royster on post-soul music of the 1980s and 1990s, Sun Ra existed outside heteronormative practices. We can even hear Afrofuturism as speculative fiction in the 1930s quote-unquote zombie music of Mary Lou Williams, those recordings where she is especially harmonic adventurous, eschewing forward propulsive harmonies in favor of static, oscillating ones. Among R&B, soul, funk, and later musicians whose work falls under the rubric of Afrofuturists are Parliament Funkadelic, Earth, Wind, and Fire, and many others working post-World War II, down to the topic of discussion for today, LaBelle and Janelle Monáe. While we may hear this music as experimental or avant-garde or simply as dance music, it is crucial to remember that these Afrofuturist musicians, and especially those whose intersectional identities reach beyond heteronormativity and further mark them as queer, do the cultural work of liberation. Two recordings and video by LaBelle and Monáe, as I said, meld speculative fiction with post-war Black popular music. In 1974, the trio LaBelle released the Alan Toussaint produced Nightbirds, which included the monster hit Lady Marmalade, which breached taboos by both identifying with a sex worker and addressing interracial sexual encounters and You Turn Me On. The second recording, of course, Queen, is from Monáe's 2013 Electric Lady CD, part of a trilogy that includes 2010's Metropolis, The Chase Suite, and 2008's The Arch Android. Through their respective feminist critiques, each troubles the way in which the music industry offers the Black body, female bodies. Each also provides example of queer music and the way Black or any listener can hear and queer in ways that we, given the ubiquitousness and saturation of Black popular music through all arenas of global mass cultures, have gotten used to. With respect to post-World War II female Afrofuturist musicians, LaBelle ranks among the first, both to emerge and cross over with white audiences and to mainstream post-soul black feminist sexuality. Here, again, I turn to Royster's the concept of the function of post-soul. She links the emergence of post-soul, soul of the 1950s and 1960s to the civil rights movement, and especially to black pride and black power. This period in black music was marked by respectability politics and by masculinist nationalism and nation building, which argued for, quote, legitimate, end quote, authentic types of black music, which not only codified ideas about race, but also constrained black female sexuality. Post-soul music, i.e. funk and music of the 1980s and later, allows for what she calls eccentric performances, not specifically LGBTQIA. Quote, though through spectacular acts of creativity, the eccentric joins forces with the queer, freak, and pervert to see around corners, push against the edges of the present to create a language not yet recognized, new sounds, new dances, new configurations of self. The makings of a black utopia, close quotation. Royster includes among these, quote, homegirls who have chosen to become exiles, brothers from another planet, the tribe of the black bohemian, nerds, queers, trekkies, and funketeers, close quotation. During the 1970s. Moving beyond the constraints of the girl group here, let's go ahead here and look at LaBelle. Here's a brief history of them. The girl group, after joining with Vicky Wickham, who became their manager in 1970, Patti LaBelle and the Bluebell transformed to become LaBelle, a funk rock trio that moved from the R&B chitlin circuit to become one of the few black female groups singing rock in the 1970s, and to perform alongside rock groups such as The Who before a white audience, yet all the while retain its black core audience. Stretching beyond R&B and soul and the stage of even the Apollo, LaBelle exemplifies Royster's eccentric performer, from its Afrofuturist presentation in the group's costumes and makeup to its landmark Metropolitan Opera House. Okay, and I'm missing maybe not, we'll proceed. To its Opera House and other stage and television performances, to its recordings as seen here from their July 1975 Rolling Stone cover. Okay, and then, where's our tech guy for just a moment? The song first appeared on the Nightbird album. In minor, it is full of ambiguity. First, we are not sure of the gender of either subject or object. Second, we are not fully sure of the status of the relationship. Our speaker reveals complex emotions, coming to terms with. All right, so here's our 1975 Rolling Stones cover, as you see in our Afrofuturist silver lame, very futuristic outfit, spacesuits. Two performances of the 1974, You Turn Me On, illustrate these points. Written by Hendrix, who emerged as the group's primary songwriter, the song first appeared on this Nightbird album. In minor, it's full of ambiguity. We're not sure of the gender of either subject or object. Second, we are not fully sure of the status of the relationship. Our speaker reveals complex emotions, coming to terms with the end of the relationship that one can easily hear is not fully concluded. We are certain of its erotic nature, as heard in the chorus and the bridge. LaBelle performed the song on television, which was broadcast on February 22nd, 1975. Don Kirshner's rock concert. Here we see the group as having moved beyond the mainstream media's limiting girl group dichotomies to appear as these other-worldly beings clad in silver lame, the same colors they encourage their Metropolitan Opera audience to wear. Okay? Here are the lyrics, and then let's go to the video.
Each time I open my eyes,
It's raining. Life could never be the same for me. That's too much pain and too much. Patti LaBelle takes us to church, colliding sacred and secular, not only with her vocals, but the way in which she commands the stage. Dancing, prancing, bowing, and bending at the waist, as caught up in the spirit at a Pentecostal church service in a state of ecstatic worship, or, Professor Jones, perhaps the preacher exhorting a sensual homily. But here, we are not drawn to the mourner's bench, though the song's minor verses would indicate so. Rather, we are brought to the precipice of a decidedly erotic performance, but not one in which Patty Hendricks or the bikini-clad Dash is offered for consumption. Gripped, we are drawn into this performance where we view a future black female body empowered to simultaneously delight in an Afro size with a C and Afro size with an S, Kama Sutra of erotic pleasure without the chains of the bad relationship. We know she's empowered, for rather than singing about her man or woman done her wrong, she's either ended it or simply will go as she pleases, returning to the source of pleasure without the complications a more structured relationship brings. I come like a pouring rain. Each time you call my name, it's good what you're doing, what you're doing. It's good what you're doing. I'm coming like a pouring rain. Each time you call my name, it's good what you're doing, what you're doing. It's good what you're doing. We are presented with something absolutely sensually delightful towards the end of the performance. The sounds of three women's voices twining, a switching and a twisting, slipping and a sliding around to each other. I come like the pouring rain. Each time you call my name, it's good what you're doing, what you're doing. It's good what you're. I come like the pouring rain. Each time you call my name. Don't stop what you're doing. LaBelle presents queer performances that push back against several things on so many different levels. For example, in one reading, a lesbian, a bisexual, trans, or non-heteronormative black subject who, though acknowledging the pain and conflict of same-sex relationships during the decade sandwiched between Stonewall and the modern LGBTQIA rights movement sparked by the AIDS crisis, is on the precipice of redemptive love and this utopian vision of black sexuality. 30 years later, we encounter another Afrofuturist queer musician. On a different end of the spectrum, yet a successor to LaBelle and other futurist funketeers and funkmeisters. In contrast to the hopeful, queerly erotic redemption heard in You Turn Me On, Janelle Monáe offers up a dystopian vision of the post-apocalyptic Afro-future in this musical genre she termed cybersoul. Over these 3 CDs, she tells the story of an android, Cindy Mayweather, android 57821, as we have learned in the previous paper, an alpha platinum who has been programmed with a, quote, rock star, proficiency package, and a working soul, close quotation. In the artwork of all three CDs, Monet is depicted as her android alter ego, or now multi-ego. We are first introduced to Cindy and the dystopian metropolis on Monet's 2003 EP, The Audition. In Cindy, Monet sings of self-acceptance. In Metropolis, from the 2003 EP, we learn of joy control, that the illicit queer love does not involve interracial or same-sex partners, or even interspecies or intergalactic love. In the year 2719, outlaw love is that between humans and cyborgs, has been noted by critics, of course, in the blogosphere and our paper preceding mine. Monet mashes up two science fiction classics, the 1927 film Metropolis, the 1968 Philip Dick novel Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, the book upon which the 1982 film Blade Runner is based. In her trilogy, Monet uses this multi-ego, the android Mayweather, to explore anxieties surrounding sexuality and difference, as did the TV show and film franchise Star Trek. In her 1997 article, The Monster Inside, 19th Century Racial Constructs in the 24th Century Mythos of Star Trek, Denise Alessandria Hurd argues that in this show, race is not problematized. Here, anxieties revolve around the mixing between humans and alien species, such as Vulcans, Klingons, Romulans, Betazoids, and others. In a spoken voice, Monet counters stereotypes humans have of wired folk, that they can be bought or sold, that they are bionic strumpets, that they have no feelings. Cindy longs for another world where she can express her forbidden love for the human Anthony Greenday.
Dream to find another world where a cyborg can love and a cyber girl is still lovely. Where there's no tying my heart, where there's no one. If my dreams when they run from your control, or it be against this disease in my heart, free in my soul.
Okay, we'll pause it there. Monet further explores the dystopian society that forbids these interspecies human-drug relationships. By 2008, Metropolis EP, Cindy Mayweather has become an outlaw who must be disassembled because of this love. The album opens with the bounty hunters being given their marching orders. Mayweather sings about being an alien from outer space now being hunted. The video of Many Moons conflates the fashion runway with the slave auction and commoditized sex. We see various citizens and denizens of Metropolis bidding on androids, including the white couple bidding on Susie Scorcher. The wife whispers in her husband's ear as Mayweather asks, "Are you bold enough to reach for love?" We observe a queer visual exchange between the white couple and the black droid, Scorcher, which precedes Mayweather's rap model on Madonna's Vogue. This is no list of glamorous Hollywood movie stars. This is a melange of society's ills and outcasts and personal, physical, and mental health issues, a catalog recited against the backdrop of a visual montage of disturbing historical images, culminating in a mushroom cloud of the apocalypse. As she raps, we see Monet perform dance steps that are a veritable primer in the African-American vernacular dance of James Brown, Michael Jackson, the mashed potatoes, slide, moonwalk, and I won't do it for you. At one point, after a traumatic memory, Mayweather seems to short circuit and lose control. The audience witnesses, and we hear her disassembly by a bounty hunter. Ironically, as a white horse surrounded by a chorus of veiled women. I've edited this so.
deathbed, White House, Jim Crow, Dirty Dirty Lies, my regards.
If Mayweather is a droid engaged in an illegal and misogynist love affair, Monet's persona is also a rebel, as we learn in the third of the trilogy, a prequel that provides information about the connection between Monet and Mayweather. Monet, born in 2719, was cloned as the android. Monet then traveled back to the 21st century. The human is the leader of Wonderland, of course, a group of rebels, as we learn in the video for Queen. This is the prologue to the video for Queen that explains why and how Monet came to be an artifact, a museum exhibit. Monet and her zombie band are brought back to life to perform Queen. If the previous parts of the trilogy, Monet shed light on illicit love, here she expands ideas about the black feminine. Monet calls out all those who criticize her and other unruly outcasts, asking, "Am I a freak?" and declaiming, "Don't judge me." Surrounded by her clones, she lists a range of behaviors in which she engages without apology. Here, Monet deliberately plays on a different meaning of the word freak, from simply meaning an odd or strange person to someone engaging in sexual practices ranging from vanilla heterosexual to kinky to queer. She simply lives life on her terms, refusing to conform to society's notion of a heteronormative black feminine. Midway through, Badula Oblongata joins in, offering a freedom song. At one point in the video, we see one of the rebels seated in front of a vintage typewriter, typing, "We will create and destroy 10 art movements in 10 years. The track concludes with another Monet rap, a manifesto. Throughout the first part of the video, we have seen Monet surrounded by the dancers, the chorus of her clone. After the Badu interlude, Erykah Badu, we see Monet alone in the James Bond sequence. Dressed in a tuxedo, we hear in the background a sonic swirl that quotes passages from Marvin Gaye's groundbreaking album of social commentary, What's Going On? In the song Queen, an acronym, as she says in an interview with Jeff Benjamin. It's for those who are marginalized, quote, she says. The Q represents the queer community, the U for the untouchables, E for immigrants, the second E for the excommunicated, and the N for those labeled as Negroid. It's for everyone who's felt ostracized. I wanted to create something for people who feel like they want to give up because they're not accepted by society. And then we'll see some clips and we'll
Can't believe all the things they say about me.
begins to sing.
Walk in the room, they throwing shade left to right.
Surrounded by the other clones.
Hey brother, can you save my soul from the devil? Say, is it weird to like the way she wear her tights? And is it rude to wear my shade? Am I a freak because I love watching Mary? Hey sister, am I good enough for your heaven? Say, will your God accept me in my black and white? Would he approve the way I'm made? A freak for dancing round, and I'm a freak for getting down, cutting up, don't put me down.
And then I want to fast forward to
Chasing the face of
Oblongata.
no me, freaks don't stop. I can't take it no more, baby. Me and Tuxedo Crew.
And the Freedom Song. And then finally the rap.
Yeah. Yeah, let's flip it. I don't think they understand what I'm trying to say. Yeah. I asked a question like this. Are we a lost generation of our people? Add us to equations, but they'll never make us equal. She who writes the movie on the script and the sequel. So why ain't the stealing of my right? rights made illegal. They keep us underground, working hard for the greedy. But when it's time to pay, they turn around and call us needy. My crown too heavy, like the Queen Nefertiti. Give me back my pyramid, I'm trying to free Kansas City. Mix and masterminds like your name, Bernie Grubbin. Well, I'ma keep leading like a young Harry Dubbin. You can take my wings, but I'm still gon' fly. And even when you added me, the booty don't lie. Yeah, I keep singing, I'ma keep writing songs. I'm tired of Marvin asking me what's going on. March through the streets, cause I'm willing and I'm able. Categorize me, I defy every label. And while you selling dope, we gon' keep selling hope.
And then pause for there. Together, these three distinct elements of both the song and the video, the chorus of clones who are unapologetic freaks, the brain, the central nervous system medulla, who lead the oppressed droids and presumably others to a better way, freedom, and ultimately the rebel who fights against economic exploitation and social injustice. Clad in the ultimate male power suit, semi-formal evening wear, the tuxedo along with the red sash, typically worn by heads of state or monarch, Monet appropriates visual symbols of white masculinity, wealth, and power to call out, and through both her image and music, push back against oppression. In a rap video, Monet asks, let's flip it. She also says, well, I'll pause there. She writes, she who writes the movie owns the script and the sequel. And she's written her own script. So we as music scholars, we can flip the script. We can write a different narrative that pushes back. Thank you.